Galimada, everyone, good evening, and a very warm welcome to the 5th virtual Preparing for Parenthood. We are absolutely delighted to have you all here to join us this evening. My name is Feroza, and I'm the Vice Chairperson of the Women's Portfolio, WAP. Firstly, I'd like to start by congratulating you, either on the arrival of your newborn baby or on the upcoming arrival. This is an incredibly exciting time for you and your family, but we know that you will have many questions, and we hope that the Preparing for Parenthood workshops will help you answer some of those questions. Just one housekeeping point from me today before we get started. We are recording today's session. If you would like to discuss this with us, please feel free to message any of the WAP admin team directly. WAP's mission is to uplift, empower, and support women in our Jamaat and their families. And the Preparing for Parenthood workshops have covered a number of topics. They started originally as face-to-face sessions in Jamaat Khana, but in the last 6 months, we've gone virtual. In the last 6 months, we've covered topics such as before your baby arrives, maternal mental health, basic baby first aid, faith formation, and in the coming months, we'll be covering early childhood development and your baby's brain development, as well as financial planning for a growing family. If you have any suggestions for other topics that you'd like us to cover in the future, please feel free to get in touch and let us know. I'd like to also take a minute now to mention the Embrace program, which is a one-to-one support network for parents of newborn babies. Many of you in your registration have asked to find out more about this program, so we will make sure that the Embrace team get in touch with you soon. Today, we're going to focus on the arrival of your newborn and the early days after bringing your baby home. We're going to have a particular focus on feeding and safe sleeping, and that's because of the requests that we've had from many of you to spend some more time on those topics. So now it gives me great pleasure to introduce our speaker this evening, Jamilah Kanji. Jamilah has had 6 years of neonatal nursery nurse experience and over 14 years of childcare experience. She was actually the pioneer of the Preparing for Parenthood sessions, and so we know we're in great hands. So without further ado, over to you, Jamilah.
Hi everyone, how are you? I'm really glad you can all make it to this session today. This is our first evening session we're doing. We're just going to talk all about your baby and how we're here to support you and just give you some extra tips. So we're going to go to our first slide, which is congratulations, your baby is born. So most of you once you find out you're pregnant, you will go to your GP and you can choose what hospital you want to get referred to. Normally, I always say to refer to your local hospital. It's easy for you to get to, but it's perfectly up to you. But one thing I would like to advise you is that you can choose where you deliver, but if your baby becomes unwell and they have to go to a neonatal unit, you can't always choose the neonatal care you have. This is because there's different levels of neonatal care around England and in London as well, especially. So they would just take your baby to the most specialist unit for your baby to be seen to. So delivery. So a lot of you make birth plans, which is perfectly fine. But I just want you to know that it's okay if it doesn't go to plan. A lot of the times, you'll have it in your head, I'm going to go to hospital at this time, I'll deliver like this will happen like this will be this, but it doesn't always go to plan, and that's okay. Especially with COVID at the moment, things are very iffy about having your partner at delivery, not having your partner at delivery, them being there with you on the postnatal ward. And because the peak numbers are getting quite high at the moment, things are changing daily. So just check with your community midwife, who's your point of call, and say to them, okay, what is happening regarding delivery? Or call your hospital where you're booked at and just give them a call and say, what's the plan with delivery? Can my partner be there? Can they not be there? And things like that. But just be totally open-minded, so it's totally okay. Once your baby's born, most of the time you'll get to do skin to skin straight away. So skin to skin involves your baby being naked on you, preferably with a nappy on, so you do not get wet or dirty, and their head on your chest, This helps your baby to keep warm. This helps to develop a great bond and also helps with lactation. As you can see from our photos, skin to skin is not only just for mothers, it's there for fathers also. So dads get stuck in when mum's feeling a little tired. When you are doing skin to skin, just make sure your baby's got a hat on because they can get very cold, and make sure they have blankets on top. I know in the photos here, the babies are not have anything on top of them, no blankets, no hats, but these photos are just to show you how to do skin to skin and examples. But always remember, when you do skin to skin, a blanket's on, couple of blankets, and a hat on your baby as well. You can do skin to skin in hospital, and you can do skin to skin when you get home. There's no limitations on how often you do it, how long you do it for. It's totally up to you. Do what works. But if you find that you are falling asleep, just put your baby down, wash your face, and then you can put your baby somewhere to sleep or pass your baby to someone else. Men, I have a lot of men get worried, especially when I'm at work, about the hair on their chest. Do not worry. If you are worried about it, just get a little muslin sheet and just put it under your baby's head if you're worried about the hair on your chest. But yeah, that's it. Over to the next slide, please. Okay, so once your baby's arrived, this is mainly primarily for babies who are born in the UK. I know we have some people from abroad called in today, and things may be different in the hospitals you deliver at, but more or less here what happens in England is your baby has a NIPE after birth. So they're checked over by a baby doctor, pediatrician, or even a consultant, just to make sure that everything's okay. They do a specific test to just make sure your baby's moros are okay and their refluxes and things like that. But the baby doctor and the pediatrician will go through everything with you, and you'll always be there when they're doing it so they can ask you questions. You'll get a red book, as you can see in the picture. That is your baby's Bible, okay? When you have to go for swimming lessons, when your baby goes to nursery, even starting school, when you go to the GP, you'll be asked to produce the red book every single time. So just keep it in your bag, keep it by the front door, and it is something that you will use quite often up until your child's 5 years old. Also, all babies are offered a hearing test, just to check their hearing is okay. Sometimes babies fail these tests. One of the main reasons people find that babies fail this test is because they're moving or crying. They like to do hearing tests when the baby is fast asleep. So don't panic if it fails. They'll just send you for an outpatient's appointment. Most of the time it's the artifacts and if your baby's crying. And if they're unable to do a hearing test, because a lot of the time there are a lot of people on the ward and they can get busy, they'll just send you an outpatient's appointment. Another test that some babies have is a BCG. So not every baby gets a BCG now. A year or two, even a few months ago actually, every baby in the whole of England would receive a BCG. Now BCG vaccines are really expensive, so they're limiting it to the borough that you live in. So if you live in the Newham borough in London, your baby will definitely have a BCG, and they do it by ethnicity as well. So they will speak to you upon going home and to see if you meet the criteria. But if someone hasn't spoken to you about BCG, make sure you speak to the midwife before you leave, because they may have forgotten. And when you do go home, you have to go home with your baby in a car seat. Or if you do not have a car seat, you can borrow a car seat from someone. If you do not have one at all, a lot of the time they let you go home in a buggy. So if you're walking, taking the bus home from the hospital, or even if you're going by black taxi, you can use your buggy to go home with. But don't stress too much. If you don't have a car, you can always borrow a car seat from someone. Right. So once your baby is born, most of the time the midwives do not let you leave the hospital until your baby is past urine. Okay, so that's the main thing they look out for, and that's an indication your baby's taking in fluids and that your baby there's nothing else wrong with your child at all. As you can see from the pictures here, I decided to use cartoons because I didn't want to show you real poo pictures. But so the first picture you see is it will be black sticky kind of poo. That's called meconium. And that's what your baby will pass in the first day or two. After that, your baby's poo will change from a green to a yellowy color, and that's really normal. It's quite seedy as well. But if you find in a few weeks your baby's getting constipated and their poos are like hard and solid, it could be that your baby's constipated. A lot of the time, as the baby gets older, their poo will change and will become a brown color. In the beginning, if you find that your baby's poo is quite pale and not looking okay, definitely take a photo. I have had hundreds of photos of poo on my phone. Trust me, people send them to me all the time. So it's okay to take a photo, show it to your GP, and then you can ask them what they think. Also, if you find that there is blood in your baby's stools or blood in your baby's nappy, just contact your GP. Some baby girls do have blood in their nappies for the first few days, but definitely when you do see that happen, take a photo or keep the nappy and just show it to your GP. Next slide. Okay, so we're going to go on to feeding. So I just want to go through like breast and bottle feeding, and do not panic and say, I need to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to feed like this. Whatever way you choose to feed, it doesn't matter as long as your baby's getting fed. That's the main thing. So I have a little demonstration boob over here. So the main thing at the beginning, when you do deliver, you get something called colostrum. If you have a cesarean, you will find your milk takes a little bit longer to come in. And that's because when you push a baby out of your vagina, it automatically sends a message to your brain that says, okay, I've delivered a baby, I'm going to have to start producing milk. But when you have a C-section, your body doesn't necessarily tell your brain that, okay, I've had a baby, I need to stop producing milk. So it's okay, don't worry at the beginning if you don't get any milk. I've met a woman who 2 weeks after she delivered, her breast milk came in, so it can take time. The main thing is with hand expressing is you need to massage your breasts, okay? The reason is that when a baby is feeding, automatically their hand goes on your breast. So for your body to know, okay, there's a baby here, I need to start making milk, just put your hands on your breast like this. And then what you do is with your fingers, like in a cup shape, you push back on your breast and then push forward to help bring the colostrum out. So push back and then push forward, like the cup shape I've got here, C shape, I should say. So push back and then push forward. If you're finding that it's taking a little bit longer, do some nipple rolling. And the reason is that when your baby's tongue is on your breast, it automatically goes around the nipple, and that sends a message to your brain that I need to start producing milk. This is a great time to have someone help you. What you need to do is get a syringe and hold the syringe and scoop up the milk that starts coming out. Sometimes you may not need to hand express much at all because your baby will automatically latch on quite well and are able to feed from your breast, but sometimes they do not. And a lot of the time you'll find a lot of mums, especially you've just delivered, you're exhausted, and your baby's screaming and screaming, and you're trying to get them latched on your breast. It's very hard, I've seen in my experience, for someone to try to get their baby to latch on when they're screaming. So a trick is hand express a little bit of milk out onto your baby finger, or if you can't, just use your baby finger. Make sure you've washed your hand and put your baby finger into your baby's mouth and give them something to suck on so they can just calm down and take a breather. Once you find your baby's calmed down, try get them to latch on your breast again. It's very, very hard, I know, at times when your baby's crying and trying to figure out what to do. But when you're in the hospital, there are people to help you. The most important person to help you also is your partner. I know right now it's really difficult because your partner most probably will not be allowed to be with you on the postnatal ward, but you guys can talk to each other on the phone. And partners, it's really important that you reassure your wife and just let them know that it's okay, things are going to be okay, and that they can do it. That's your most important job, is to be positive and reassure your partner and just let them know that they're doing a great job. What happens then is after 3 days, that's when your milk really comes through. So you'll be really emotional, you'll start crying for no reason. When I'm at work, I make sure I have chocolates on the ward with me. So when women are day 3, I just give them some chocolate because that always helps. So partners, just make sure there's some chocolate in the fridge because that will really help you at day 3, especially when the tears start coming through. And you'll literally cry for no reason, but it's okay. Also, just if you're struggling with producing milk, make sure you express. Expressing every 2 to 3 hours really helps to bring that milk in, especially through the night. I meet some women that said they expressed at 7 in the morning, then didn't express till 11 o'clock at night. That's not going to help your milk at all. You have to keep an alarm. I know you're going to be exhausted, but wake up every 3 hours and express. You can hand express, you can use a manual pump, or you can use an electric breast pump as well. They really do help. Just put them on your breast for at least 15 minutes. If you've got a double pump, 15 minutes is fine, or single pump, 15 minutes on each breast. If you don't get anything, it's okay. What it is doing is stimulating your breast and saying, okay, there's a baby here, I need to start producing milk, okay? But just keep a log or keep an alarm so you know every 3 hours you need to express. If you're breastfeeding 99% of the time, fully breastfeeding, you do not need to express because your baby is your expressing pump. Your baby is the one latched onto your breast and like the breast pump for you, but your baby is your breast pump. So you don't need to worry. But if you worry about your lactation and you spoke to a lactation consultant or your community midwife and they said, okay, your milk hasn't come in, you will most probably need to start expressing even after feeds or alternate feeds. But speak to your community midwife. They are experts when it comes to breastfeeding. They will come home to you and explain to you what to do. So do speak to them. We're going to send you an email with different links. On there, you can find your local breastfeeding support in your area. Just give them a call. There's breastfeeding helplines that you can call as well, and they'll be around to help you. One other thing you'll find is you'll have on the wards at home, you'll have so many people tell you about different positioning, how to position yourself when you're breastfeeding. The most important thing I would say is do what works for you and your baby. I've seen people breastfeed in such weird ways, but it's okay. You do what works for you and your baby. So I've got a little doll here. Actually, I'll use this one. I've got a little doll here, and can you see my position? So my hand, I'm going to scoop my baby. So my hand is not on my baby's head like this. The reason we do not do this is your baby can't move their head. And when they're trying to come off your breast, they can't move at all and they can choke. So remember, always scoop your baby, your hands like this at the back of their neck, so they've got space to move. You've got control over these 2 fingers of your baby. And just, if you can see, just like this, and then you can latch them to your breast. So they say nipple to nose. nipple to nose. But what I find really helps is if you have your nipple along your baby's mouth, just to help them open it, just rub it along, and that really helps to open your baby's mouth and for them to latch on. And if you find your baby's a little bit further away from your nipple and they've opened their mouth, literally get your baby and put them onto your breast. It does work. I do this all the time, all day. And I literally say to people, as soon as your baby's mouth open, put them to your breast. It's very natural to bend forward to breastfeed and stay forward like this. You're going to get backache. Please don't. Once you get your baby latched, sit back and relax, because what will happen is your back will really hurt you. I bottle feed most of the time at work, 5 days a week. And if I sit like this, my back is gone. Once I sit back and relax, I find it's a much better position. There's a myth that people will say to you is breastfed babies do not need to burp. I 100% do not agree with this. Breastfed babies get wind as well as bottle-fed babies. Imagine your baby's crying and you're trying to latch onto your baby and they're trying to suck and they're crying. A lot of the time, that's when they get wind into them. And what you must make sure you do is burp. So some people do 2 breasts when they're feeding, or some people just do 1 breast. If you find your babies come off your breast and they're refusing to feed, a lot of the time babies refuse to feed is because they've got wind. So we're just going to go through burping. There's different positions, but I find this position works really well. So your baby's upright, their back is straight, and put your hand, see my fingers like this, under their neck, if you can see. I know it's really weird, but like in a strangle position, right under, so your full control of your baby is here in this C shape, okay? So you've got one hand free and one hand of your full baby's control, and make sure they're sitting on your lap or on your knee, and just with the upright position, just rub their back round and round like this, or pat their back as well. Don't worry about hurting them. I see some people patting like this. This is not going to do anything. Pat like this, and it really does help bring the wind out. If you find you're struggling that way, lean your baby's stomach and back forward and rub their back again like this, and that does help. Also, to help bring wind out is movement. So if you find this has taken a really long time, get your baby, put them on your shoulder like this and rub their back as well. I've always found movement really helps with bringing out wind, but the thing is you need to be comfortable. Do not worry, you're not going to hurt your baby. You're helping your baby bring out wind. The funniest story I've ever heard when I was winding a baby was, don't sit the baby up like this, because their stomach will get squashed. Their stomach's not going to get squashed. Do not worry. Sit your baby up and just rub their back. Some babies take a long time to bring the wind out, but it takes a few times of winding your baby to know what position your baby likes. Some babies do not like sitting like this, and some babies prefer like this. Some babies prefer if you're standing up and trying to wind as well. You will find what works for you. A lot of the time it's trial and error. In the email we send you later, there is a picture on how to wind your baby in different positions. Another lady I helped out, I showed her YouTube videos, and those YouTube videos worked really well. So if you've delivered already and you're struggling with winding, watch them today. Or if you're coming up to your due date a few days before, try watch those videos on winding on YouTube. Just type in how to burp my baby, and they really will help. Another way of feeding your baby is bottle feeding. So a lot of the time, 90% of the women I meet do not buy a bottle before delivery. They don't. They just say, I'm going to breastfeed, I don't need a bottle. Have one bottle in your house, because sometimes the way you anticipate you're going to feed may not always work. Not every woman can breastfeed. Not every woman produces enough breast milk, and it is okay to bottle feed your baby. It's perfectly fine. It works really well. It's really handy. It helps other members of your family to help out as well. And it's just convenient also. Breastfeeding is convenient as well, but so is bottle feeding. So it's perfectly okay. I would say to you, if you're adamant that you 100% want to breastfeed, keep at least one bottle and some liquid formula in your house. You can get little small bottles of formula just before delivery. Keep them in your house. Keep a couple in your hospital bag, because at the hospital, most hospitals will not give you any formula. Try not to take powder formula with you because it's really hard to make in a hospital. Try get some liquid and just take one bottle with you. And keep one at home with you, just in case. So formula, every formula is the same. Every single formula is the same. The only difference is Aptamil Pro Future formula has egg in it. So if you find your baby's taking Aptamil Pro Future and your baby's vomiting a lot and it's a really foul smelling vomit, it's because of the egg. Just switch on to another formula and it works perfectly fine. There is no brand I would recommend because literally every single brand is the same. Every single formula, literally, yeah? So it doesn't matter what you buy, just buy whichever one you want to buy and whichever one is feasible for you. People even use the Aldi formula, which is perfectly fine to use. Use one that works for you, okay? And when it comes to bottle feeding, what you need to do is prepare your formula beforehand if you're using powder. So just remember, when you boil your kettle, there must be fresh tap water in the kettle. Do not use bottled water. Make sure you use fresh tap water from the kettle. If you are abroad and you find the tap water is quite, can be quite dirty or it's not filtered enough, what I would say to you is try keep pre-boiling water over and over again, or use Evian. So the only reason I recommend Evian is because there's less sodium in that water compared to other brands of bottled water. So pour the water in the kettle, make sure it boils to 100 degrees. When you're making powder formula, it's 1 scoop of powder to 30 mils of water, okay? So if I know my baby takes 70 mils of milk, I can't make 70 mils of formula. I have to make 90 mils and then just throw away the rest, okay? I would not recommend pre-making formula and putting it in the fridge because sometimes it can get quite thick, or sometimes your babies can get gastric flu if it hasn't cooled down in time before you put it into the fridge. So always making batches of 30. When you're bottle feeding, there's different positions you can do, but I always recommend when you are going to feed, make sure there's milk in the teat like this. A lot of people put the baby's bottle in the baby's mouth like this without there being any milk in. What's going to happen is your baby's going to suck in air. Literally put milk into the bottle like this, and if your baby's mouth is closed, rub it along their mouth, just like the nipple, yeah? And once they open their mouth, then you can put the milk in, put the bottle in, I mean, sorry. Position-wise, this is a really good position. I always find when you're doing this position, what can happen is your baby gets quite warm, and what happens is their neck goes further down like this. When your baby's neck is down like this, it's very hard for them to swallow. You always want, when you're bottle feeding, even breastfeeding, a nice gap here when you're feeding, okay? That helps the baby, bring the baby to swallow the milk. Some babies, especially babies who have feeding problems, you can sideline position like this. Just make sure you have a pillow underneath your baby like this, and then you can bottle feed this way, okay? You will find what works best for you, but I always recommend a little bit further away your baby is to you, the better, because they don't get so warm. Always try to have control of one hand with your baby. It does make things a lot easier. Let me just see, I've got a little notepad here, write down. So sometimes, a lot of the times when babies go home, the main problem a lot of people find is the babies haven't put on weight or they're not feeding well at all. And it's what we're going to do is talk about the baby's feeding cues. So if we go to the next slide, please. And this will, you'll get this in the email as well, but it will really help you understand what to look out for, to know that your baby's hungry or looking to feed. So the first early cues are your baby's stirring. If you're a deep sleeper at night, it's very hard for you to know when your baby is waking up. I do a lot of night nanny work and literally I'm awake most of the night because I just need to know, okay, is the baby going to feed or not? Otherwise, I'm a really deep sleeper. So you'll find your baby's opening their mouth, turning their head, hands in their mouth, just a lot of increased movement, stretching, and they're saying, okay, I'm getting really hungry now. And then, you know, when your baby's really, really hungry, is they're screaming and crying. What you want to do is try and feed before that can happen. It's not always the case, so don't worry if you miss it. It's perfectly okay. Just try calm your baby down a little bit before. By doing that is to cuddle your baby skin to skin, talking to them, or just literally get your finger or even a dummy, which is perfectly fine to use, give it to them in their mouth, and then you can look to breastfeed. If you're bottle feeding, sometimes it helps just to put the bottle into the baby's mouth, and it really helps them to calm down. If we go to the next slide, please. Okay, so as I said to you earlier, winding is really, really important. Even for breastfed babies, wind your baby. So I always say to you, if your baby's like slowing down with their feeds and they're literally stopped halfway and you're thinking, okay, they haven't had enough, it's a lot of the time it's wind. Get your baby to burp and then try again. Don't put your baby down, then you wait 10 minutes and then 15 minutes and they're crying again. And the reason they're crying is because they probably have wind. Then you have to burp them and then you'll see they're hungry again and you'll go to feed. What you need to do is if your baby stops halfway through the feed or even after a 10-minute breastfeed or a few minutes breastfeed, burp your baby and then try again, definitely. What you want is your feed to be done within 30 minutes, okay? The reason is that babies start to lose weight after that 30-minute period and they get lethargic and they burn calories. They don't have the energy like we do. Watch your baby's cues and make sure you're making up that formula safely. It is okay to use the prep machines. It's perfectly fine as long as you wash them correctly and clean them up. Sorry about that. You wash them and you sterilize them as well. It's important as well when you're bottle feeding to use a sterilizer. A microwave sterilizer is fine. Cold water sterilizers are perfectly fine. When you're using breast milk, I have met some people who don't use a sterilizer at all, but just make sure you're really washing those bottles safely. Okay, next. Right, so safe sleeping. We have had some questions in the emails regarding safe sleeping, and I would always recommend you to look at the Lullaby Trust website. So when we would do our live sessions for preparing for parenthood, we would have a lot of games coming to when it came to safe sleeping. But what we're going to do here is just talk to you about how to ensure your baby is sleeping safely at night. So as you can see the top picture, make sure your baby's flat on their back. In the olden days, babies would sleep on their stomach, but that's not a safe way to sleep. Make sure they're flat on their back. The cot is empty. It's so easy. I see all the time people put lots of toys in the cots. You don't want that because that can fall on your baby's face and they can stop breathing. A lot of the time when they go to people's homes, they have cot bumpers around the cot, which are tied with string. just please make sure you don't use them. The reason is that those strings can come off and go into your baby's mouth, or they can choke on them. Also, those cot bumpers act like an extra layer on your baby, and your baby can get very hot. The most important thing is that you have a waterproof, clean mattress. Before, the Lullaby Trust did express for everyone to have a brand new mattress every single time, but they understood that this can get quite expensive. You have to make sure your mattress is clean, it's waterproof, there's no water damage, because the mold can affect your baby. If you're using a cot that you used with the previous child, as long as you know the history of that mattress and you know that it's clean and it's firm and in a good condition, then you can use it. But if you have doubts in your mind, always buy a new mattress. You can use a used cot, use Moses basket, but if you're not 100% certain the mattress is safe, just use a new one. They recommend that your baby stays in your room for the first 6 months, and that's 100% the way you should go. Some people do find at 4 months old they need their space, so they have the baby in the next room, but just make sure you're meeting safer sleep guidelines. So no smoking in the house, no smoking around baby. If you do smoke, just change your clothes, wash your hands. The most deadliest thing for your baby is secondhand smoke. And no hats in the house as well. If we go to the next slide. Okay, so these are things that you really should avoid. So definitely no hats in the house. They say the room temperature should be 18 to 21 degrees, but in the summer you can't help that. Just if you know that it does get quite warm in your house, just put one less layer on your baby. Room thermometers can be really helpful, but please do not get stressed out if your house does get very warm. Just open the window slightly, or just one less layer on your baby. So as you can see the picture on the right, please avoid pillows, boundaries, sleepy heads, and shape formers or shape builders or head pillows. They are really unsafe for your baby, really, really unsafe. Some of the brands have been linked to cot death. The biggest brand out there is Sleepyhead. And the reason that we say sleepyheads are not safe is they act as literally one thick blanket on your baby. In neonatal units, we use a boundary around babies to keep them warm, because the prem babies really struggle to keep warm. So a large boundary, similar to a sleepyhead, keeps your baby warm. If you're using it at home inside your baby's cot, your baby can overheat. The 3 risks of cot death are smoking, overheating, or sleeping in the same bed as your baby. So please try and refrain to use them in the cot. Please try. If you are using it at the moment, I've seen hundreds of people do. If you are, remember it is a thick blanket on your baby, so use one less layer. And if you find that you're holding your baby on the sofa and you're feeling sleepy, just literally put your baby down, wash your face, pick your baby up and put them somewhere safe. If you're trying to walk around while you're quite sleepy with your baby, you could trip over. Bed sharing is not 100% advised, but please look at the Lullaby Trust for ways to sleep safely with your baby in the same bed as you, but I would recommend not to. Thank you. Next slide. Sleep tips. So it is advisable that your baby does have a good sleep through the night. As your baby gets older, at 3 months old, they may sleep for a lot longer through the night. In the beginning, your baby will feed literally every 2 hours or every 3 hours. Then you will say, okay, that's normal, and your baby will do that. If they're sleeping through the night when they're 1-2 weeks old, then you know that something's not okay. Then they're probably not having enough feed. Just if you find that you're feeding your baby, then you put them down and they're crying. A lot of the time it's wind, or they need to burp, or that they're still hungry. So check your baby's nappy as well. Night routines do work. You don't need a night routine straight away. After the next couple of months, do get into a routine. The trick at 3 months for your baby to sleep longer, so your baby has sleep cycles. They last for 40 minutes, especially nap cycles in the day. For them to connect their nap cycle, they need to be able to put themselves back to sleep. The best way to do this is at 3 months old, you're not rocking your baby to sleep. You want to put your baby down sleepy, but not fast asleep. So when they go down, they're in the same place as when they wake up. If your baby at 3-4 months old is falling deeply asleep on you and you put them down in 40 minutes, an hour, 2 hours later, they're waking up. The reason they're waking up is because they're not in the same position they went down in. So they get scared. They're thinking, okay, where am I? So when you put your baby down, you want them to be sleepy, not fast asleep. And that really helps for your baby to connect the sleep cycles, and it will help your baby sleep through. I have seen women do this and it works a charm. By 3-4 months old, their babies are sleeping 6 to 7 hours in the night, and it really does work, but it's up to you. The first few times when you do put your baby down, they will cry and you will be terrified about it, and you would feel, and it's perfectly normal to feel really scared about it and upset that you want to pick your baby up, but it's okay after 3-4 months old if they're crying a little bit and then they go to sleep. But before 3 months old, I'll say not to let your baby cry, and not to put them down and let them cry it out, because it is not great for their brain development. Okay, next slide. Car safety. So we're just going to go through this quite quickly. If you can see the 2 car seats here, one car seat is safe, the other car seat is unsafe. The reason for the unsafe car seats is that the straps are holding onto the baby's blanket. They're not holding onto the baby. So if you break, your baby's going to go flying out the window. If you see on the picture on the left-hand side, baby is just in a vest, a baby grow. You can also put hat on and then the straps on. What a lot of the time I see is people wear these big snowsuits for their baby, and then they put the straps on, and the snowsuits are so large, the straps are holding the snowsuit, not the baby. So you don't need to buy these big snowsuits to go home in. Your car is warm, you can put blankets on your baby after you have strapped them in. So make sure the straps go in, and then you put a blanket on top and a hat on top as well. What you need to remember is there's a 2 finger gap between the straps and your baby's body, okay? So just please be aware of that and practice how to use your car seat at home. Next slide. Okay, signs and symptoms of illness at home. What you can treat at home is sneezing. The amount of people that go to A&E because their baby is sneezing is unbelievable. I will tell you, every day in A&E, there's at least one baby that comes in because the mother is worried that baby's sneezing. It's okay if your baby sneezes, perfectly fine. They'll sometimes do it if they're getting a cold. So it's okay if your baby's got a normal cold, especially if they have siblings who are going to nursery. They will get a cold, they will get a runny nose, but speak to your GP about treating the runny nose. Also, your babies in winter season, as we are in right now, can get bronchiolitis. So they will start coughing and they will get like cold-like symptoms of runny nose and things like that. It's fine. Just make sure you're checking your baby's temperature, make sure they're getting fluids in them. If they're not eating or drinking, just contact your GP straight away or go to A&E. Coronavirus, it's okay if you can stick to the slide. So coronavirus, babies can get coronavirus. The symptoms are very much like they've got a cough, they're wheezing slightly, or a temperature. Definitely contact your GP. Just call 111. It's nothing to panic about. You can go to the next slide. I would say what we found in A&E at the moment is there's a massive decrease of people going in. Massive decrease. Do not be scared of the hospital, and do not be scared to take your baby to A&E. It's safer to take your child to the hospital then worried about them getting coronavirus and staying at home, definitely, if you are really worried, pick up the phone and call 999. The main things I would say, if you're worried about, if your baby's really breathing fast, really gasping for breath, or they're having a fit or convulsion, or their skin, if you can see the picture here, is quite mottled. Some babies are born mottled. That's just their skin. But especially for Asian skin, it's not normally like this. So you would look at that and you would just get to a hospital straight away. If they're very lethargic, not wanting to wake up for feeds, literally when your baby's born, if they're going 4 or 5 hours without a feed, you need to get it checked out because your baby could be jaundice. Or if your baby's very abnormally cold to touch. Your baby's temperature should be 36.5 to 37.1, 37.5. If you find that it's 37.5 to just under 38, take a layer off and do not touch your baby and check it after 1 hour. If it's creeping up, contact your GP or contact 111. Also, if your baby's vomiting a lot after every feed, they could have reflux, or if you find they're unable to keep any fluids down, definitely contact your GP. And if your baby hasn't passed urine for 12 hours, definitely speak to someone as soon as possible. Colic. So many babies get colic. It's normal. It's totally normal. And the reason you will know your baby has colic is in the evening time, they are screaming and crying. If it's crying in the daytime, your baby doesn't have colic. It's the evening, 7 to 8 o'clock time, you'll find they're really crying. Colic, a lot of the time, is people don't know the answer to it, but through my experience, I've seen it's a lot of build-up of wind. So if you're really struggling, if you find your baby's quite windy, or you're struggling to burp your baby, or you don't burp your baby, a lot of the time you'll find that your babies do get colic. There are different medications that can help, or a lot of them are herbal. Go to your pharmacy and speak to them. Don't try to make all these medications at home. Definitely speak to your pharmacy first. If there's different ways you can help your baby, music, a warm bath, gentle rocking. It is tiring and it is stressful. I've been there when there are colic babies around, and it is really, really stressful. But just remember, you can do it, okay? And you're going to get through it. Your baby's going to get through it. You may try hundreds of different medications and you'll find the one that works for you. But speak to your pharmacy first before giving anything to your baby. And that should be it. Okay, just one thing I wanted to add quickly was, it's very easy to look at Instagram, Facebook, TV, read books, and say, and they'll tell you, this is what a baby does, this is how a baby behaves, this is what happens when you have a baby. Forget it. It doesn't matter if a book says to do this. You act on your natural instinct and you say, okay, I think there's something wrong, or it's okay if my baby's not breastfeeding, or it's okay if my baby's not doing as so-and-so is doing. It's perfectly fine. So yeah, just go with your gut instinct. You're all amazing and you're going to have such an amazing time with your baby, and congratulations.
Thank you so much, Jamilah. Thank you for taking the time to share your experience and your knowledge with us today. So as promised, now is the Q&A portion of today's session. And as I mentioned before, please feel free to post any questions that you have in the Zoom chat box, or even just send a private message to me directly. I think a lot of the questions that came through on registration regarding safe sleeping and feeding have probably been covered by Jamilah in her presentation. But if anyone submitted a question and feels they would like more clarification, then just let us know. Jamilah, I'm going to come to you with a question on a slightly different vein that came through on the registration, which is, if you're having a boy, what's the right time to have their circumcision and what's the healing time?
So I actually got some advice from a doctor regarding this, and she said to me the best time to do it is post 5 days after delivery. Okay, so 5 days after delivery is the best time to do it. The sooner you do it, the better. The reason is that your baby then, as they get older, they'll start to play with their wound and it can get infected and take longer to heal. So the sooner you do it, the better. It does take up to 2 weeks to heal, and the team, the doctors or whoever performs the circumcision will just advise you and give you medical advice on what to do and how to clean the wound regularly.
Great, thank you. We've had a question come through on the chat, which is it okay to prepare formula milk in advance, and how long can you store it in the fridge for?
Okay, so it's okay. It is okay, and we do it in the hospital all the time. We do prepare formula milk, like powder, special powder formula in advance. And I would say the max you keep it in your fridge for is up to 12 hours. Don't keep it any longer. Once you let it totally cool down till you put it in your fridge, yeah, and then you warm it up, not in the microwave. You can use a bottle warmer. You can leave it out to get to room temperature, because some babies don't mind drinking cold milk. Or just get some hot water in a pan and put the bottle in there. Just make sure you check it on your wrist. You can make it in advance if you really want to, but I know it takes ages to make up, especially when you're in a rush. But yeah, it is okay, but maximum 12 hours.
Okay, thank you. Could you give a little bit of guidance on weaning a baby off the bottle after a year?
Okay, so I spoke to a friend about this, and she said to me that it's perfectly fine to introduce baby the beaker from 1 year old, but you do it when it works for you, and don't feel pressured about it. You just do it when it works for you. What you can do is when you are weaning onto a beaker, is the odd feed, just maybe one feed for one, like in the beginning in the day, give the beaker instead of the bottle, and then increase it to 2, then 3, and so forth. But yeah, you do it when you find it's working for you. And if you find you introduce the beaker and it's not working great yet, wait a little bit, then try again.
Great, thank you, Jamilah. Some people have been told that with bottle feeding, the baby could be almost being held up at 90 degrees and the bottle can be horizontal. That's obviously quite different from what you showed us today. Is that another option or not?
Yeah, it is another option, but
Okay.
don't start trying to measure yourself. You do what works for you. Always remember that you need milk in the teat. Yeah, that's really important. And just find a position that works well for you. You might find that position doesn't work well, but you can use other positions. A lot of the time people say that, when can I introduce a bottle? When I'm breastfeeding. And I always say at 6 weeks old. If you deliver and you're fully breastfeeding, wait till your baby hits 6 weeks, and then you can introduce a bottle.
Okay, thank you.
And bottle at night really works well. If you're going to exclusively breastfeed in the day, then you can use 1 or 2 bottles in the night. It helps your baby sleep longer.
Great, thank you. And a quick follow-up question on the formula. Once the formula milk is warmed, can it be reused or restored in the fridge?
So if you've warmed it after it's been in the fridge, you can't reuse it. Once you've warmed it up, you can't reuse it. You have to throw it away.
Okay, thank you. We've had another question on the chat, which is, when can I introduce a pacifier? I've been avoiding because I don't want to miss hunger cues.
You can use it straight away. It doesn't matter. You can use it straight away. A lot of the time it doesn't always. If your baby's hungry, they're going to chuck out the pacifier and want to feed, so you're not going to miss so many hunger cues, but you can use it straight away. They do say, the Lullaby Trust, that it really does help to prevent cot death as well. It's just something to do with the breathing. So yeah, feel free to use it straight away. I use it in the hospital all day long, especially when we're trying to comfort babies. So yeah, it's fine.
Thank you. So we did have a question come through asking what to do if your baby is choking. We previously did a baby first aid tips preparing for parenthood session. It is available on the YouTube channel. So I would recommend that you take a look at the videos. The baby first aid session covers CPR, choking, burns, and other signs and symptoms of illness in a bit more detail. So it'd be a really good thing to have a look at. And in a minute, I will post the link to the YouTube playlist on the chat. And finally, we had a question about about baby's brain development, which is really great because actually the topic of our next session is exactly on that. So early childhood development, your baby's brain development, and also getting into the detail on the science behind play. So please look out for our marketing for this session, which will be coming up in October. I think we've had one other question come through on the chat, and maybe a couple of others. We'll just have a quick look at that. So Jamilah, there's another question for you. Any advice on allowing your baby to sleep on their side after 3 months?
If they choose to sleep on their side, it's fine. Don't put them on their side to sleep. They should always be flat on their back. But if they choose to sleep on their side, it is perfectly fine. You'll find at 3 months, they don't normally turn so much, but it is okay to do. But only if they do it themselves. Don't put them on their side yourself.
Okay, thank you. Another one has come through. If you are exclusively breastfeeding, how do you know if your baby is feeding enough?
Okay, so you'll know your baby's feeding enough is they will go 2 hours, an hour and 45 minutes to 2 hours without feed. Yeah, they'll be able to settle. They're passing urine, opening their bowels as well. That doesn't always tell you specifically that they're taking enough, especially when it comes to nutrition, but that is a way to know. Also, you'll know is when you have your baby's weighed that they're putting on weight. If you find your baby's waking up every half an hour, every hour to feed, and they're just not settling, then that is an indication your baby's not taking enough milk. Another indication to know your baby's had a good feed is feel your breast before a feed and feel your breast after the feed and notice a difference. If you find your breast is a lot softer after the feed, it's not so heavy, then you know that your baby's fed really well. A lot of the times, this is another quick tip, a lot of the times when you are breastfeeding and your breasts get really full and you're going to go feed your baby, but they're so full that you can't feed your baby or it's difficult for your baby to latch on, hand express a little bit of milk out or use a breast bump for a couple of minutes and then get your baby to latch on. Great. That will help.
Thank you so much. So I think that's all we have time for today. Thank you all once again for joining us today. We just wanted to take a moment to highlight the different areas that the institutions are here to support you. The coronavirus support team, contact details are there on the slide here and also available on the IR UK app. If there's anything we can do to support you, not just in your parenting journey, but also in other areas, please don't hesitate to get in touch. The Women's Portfolio have also recently launched the Sisterhood, which is a virtual community of women covering different aspects and providing support in different areas of life. The next session is on the 30th of September and covers changes at work. So please look out for marketing for that. If you've missed it and you would like to register for that session, please just let us know at the WAP email address. As I mentioned just a little while ago, the next Preparing for Parenthood session will be covering early childhood development and marketing for that will be out shortly, so please look out for it. And finally, just another reminder about the Embrace programme, which is one-to-one support for parents of newborns. If you have asked to be contacted by Embrace, the Embrace team will be in touch with you. If you decide you would like the Embrace team to contact you, please just drop us a line and let us know, and we will arrange that for you. So I think I have one more question, but I'm conscious of time. So if you have to leave us, of course, that's fine. But Jamilah, if you don't mind, one more question has come through to ask, is it okay to feed more than the recommended amount? Roz, I don't know whether you want to maybe provide a little bit more background as to that question, or Jamilah, would you like to go ahead and give your response?
I think it's really hard to say what the recommended amount is, to be totally honest with you. It is quite difficult not knowing how much your baby's taking at the moment. But if your baby's hungry and they need feeding, it's okay to feed them. Some people do find that you can overfeed formula-fed babies. If you find your baby's vomiting after feeds, a lot of the time it is because they could be overfeeding. So it's very hard to answer that question not knowing, but if you do need any extra support, contact us and we can put you through the Embrace program, and then we will be able to contact you directly on a one-to-one basis and offer as much support as you need. We are there to help you. So yeah, Roz, if you want to contact us through the Embrace program, and then we can be in touch and help you through there so we get a better idea of how you're feeding.
Great. Thank you so much, Jamilah, and thank you all for joining us today. Yali Midut.